Guys, before we begin this video, I want to apologize for my previous misleading title I made. In my own head it sounded way different, but then I read it again from your guys' perspective, and I clearly see what you meant. So for this, once again, I do apologize, and I want to thank you all so much for keeping me accountable, and I ask you one thing: please continue to do so. If you do not think you have a voice on this channel among hundreds of thousands of you, guys, do not worry. You do have a voice. Please keep making those comments if you see that my channel is going off track or I'm going something completely opposite direction. Please do let me know. I read the comments pretty much every single video, and I see the general feeling about the video that I'm making. Once again, thanks to all of you guys writing those comments. You do make these videos and my channel in general better. You guys serve as my moral compass. Once again, in case I deviate from my direction, you will be the one to guide me in the correct one. For this, I once again, guys, appreciate it so much. I apologize for my poor decision in making the previous video title, which is now changed. And if you're still willing to give me another chance, now let's go straight into the video. Finally, some good news, very good news from the south, because the entire battalion of Ukrainians crossed Dnipro river, brought even more armored vehicles to the other side, and it looks like that the Russian commanders, they start to completely give up. And some highest Ukrainian government and military authorities, they acknowledge a significant success in Crimea. And also it looks like that the Crimean Bridge is now fully and officially locked as one of the next targets. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And today let's talk about some ridiculous Russian politicians, the statements they make, and that complete their disconnection from the real world. And so you probably remember this guy Andrei Gurylev. He was basically one of the masterminds behind mobilization crazy ideas and how to track every single person and send them to Ukraine. And so recently in one of the propagandistic TV shows with Alexander Solovyov, he made another ridiculous statement. He's basically saying that this so-called special military operation, in fact, it is helping the Russian economy, the Russian world, and just Russia in general. And he said, yeah, unfortunately, I mean, there are casualties, but that's a sacrifice for the greater good of the future of the nation. I am now only wondering if he himself or his children are also considered to be the great sacrifice for the greater good of the nation, or it does not apply to politicians and their offsprings, because you don't understand, this is different. And most certainly I do not understand how he says that this actually increases and makes it better the Russian economy, when so many Western brands left Russia. Not too many countries want to deal with Russia anymore. And also recently there was an article that Russia was even asking some other countries, which they previously sold weapons to them, to return those weapons back to Russia, because they do not have that much left to continue their war in Ukraine. Then we also have statement from Dmitry Medvedev. You already know this cringe guy. He basically said that since the beginning of this year, 410,000 Russians signed up a contract service to fight in Ukraine. And yeah, obviously not a single one of them was forced to do it, according to him. All of these were volunteers. The only question is what happened with the previous 300,000 mobilized in September. I guess we don't talk about them anymore. And then he also Medvedev mentioned that Russia do not have a problem with paying these many contract soldiers. Everything is always on schedule and the payments are never late. I mean, yes, when your losses are almost more than 300,000, the reason why your payments are never late, it is because you do not have that many people left to pay those salaries. And obviously we cannot ignore another ridiculous guy, the representative of Russia in the United Nations, Vasily Nebenzia, who mentioned that Ukraine always coordinates its attacks against civilian targets, infrastructure, and even regular civilian people. And Ukraine coordinates those attacks with America. So according to him, this is how meetings are. Ukrainian military representatives asking American ones, so guys, is it okay if we attack a concentration of school kids in Dnipro? Do you give us a green light? And Americans reply, yes, of course. Why would you attack Russian military targets when you can attack unprotected civilians? This is exactly, I think, what is happening inside Vasily Nebenzya's head. To say the least, it is ridiculous is to say nothing. And so yes, enough with this ridiculous clownship. Now let's talk about some actual serious news. We start in the east, where 40,000 Russians looks like started attacking from 3 different directions. Then we talk about situation in the south, where the entire Ukrainian battalion crossed Dnipro river and started expanding the bridgehead. And finally we'll talk about what's coming next. And so first of all, if you don't mind, let's make a quick stop in Kharkov region, because recently Ukrainians started building literally underground schools for kids to study there, and allegedly, reportedly, these underground schools will be able to withstand the attack, the direct hit by Russian S-300 missiles. Next, we refer to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, which claims that Russians continued their offensive along Kupiansk-Svatove Crimea front line, with reportedly some kind of gains not yet confirmed by this map, and the main concentration of Ukrainian attacks was next to Bakhmut. And then we even have a video like this, also allegedly from the eastern front lines, where you can see looks like the cluster ammunition of Ukrainians in work. You can see the devastating effects of this particular weapon, leaving not that many chances for the Russian soldiers. Then right here is another video from the eastern front lines, where Russian armored personnel carriers and infantry fighting vehicles are trying to bring Russian infantry closer to the front line, and as you could have guessed, they were not able to do it without being destroyed completely by Ukrainians. Also, not that many chances left. And already closer to Donetsk region is the video of Ukrainians once again extremely effectively using their drones to destroy a heavy flamethrower, Solntsepek, another one of the Russian army. The consequences, the fireball, is bigger than you would even imagine. And today I decided to release fully uncensored this one episode of the Russian Dude on my Patreon completely for free for every single one of you to see and enjoy it. And just see how uncensored episode look like, so if you want to check it for yourself, please go ahead, the link is down below. And now let's continue. So Ukrainians also reportedly were able to destroy an assault group of Russians along with 2 of their tanks in Novobakhmutivka. And in Avdiivka itself, looks like that those 40,000 Russians which were concentrated around the city now looks like that they were set in motion, because the attacks from 3 directions, from the north, south and the east, slowly, but they did resume. This information came to us from the spokesperson of the Ukrainian army, Ruslan Muzhenchuk, and he's basically confirming what I just said, that Russians are advancing from 3 different directions, but because of this temporarily slowed down last week or 2, and also just in general for the last several months before the Russian offensive in Avdiivka started, Ukrainians were also already able to establish pretty big fortifications. That is why the advancements of Russians are not as successful right now, and Ukrainians are relatively easily repelling these attacks. And even though the Avdiivka offensive by Russians only officially started 1 month ago, they are already able to almost fully destroy this city to the ground. There are still few civilians left, but there is no way that those houses are longer able to be used to live inside them. I mean, just take a look. Once again, there is no way me, you, or anyone else in the world with the common sense who can call this destruction as the liberation by the Russian army from Ukrainians, because this is what they claim. It does not look like this to me, at least personally. And you know what, even though it is technically Russians who are attacking around Avdiivka, and yes, they were unfortunately able to capture some land to the west of Krasnohorivka, But Ukrainians are also recapturing some territories themselves, because as you can see right here, some small part of land, just literally a couple of streets to the northwest of Opotne, were liberated and contested back by Ukrainians. And then, as you go more down to Marinka, located right here, Ukrainians destroyed yet another assault group of Russians with their armored vehicles. And you know what? Even Russian military bloggers, they started to acknowledge that a lot of Russian military commanders, they start to simply give up because of this craziness and insanity what their generals are telling them to do. So let's talk about this particular topic really quick right now, before switching our attention to the south. And what basically it means is that a lot of experienced Russian military commanders, sometimes quite often, they're being sent to the front lines to fight alongside regular privates. So obviously it is extremely dangerous and it is improper use of their knowledge and skills. While in the meantime, some other generals, commanders, or sons of generals, they just sit in their comfortable Moscow offices and they are the ones who are developing tactics or maybe even training military personnel. And usually, sometimes, those are the people who did not even have military experience themselves. So you can only imagine what they can teach the new conscripts. Pretty much nothing. This problem specifically became extremely obvious after another offensive of Russians against Avdiivka, because those previously mentioned Russian military commanders, they were hoping that the generals will at least start to learn from their mistakes. The same ones they did in the beginning of the war, in the south, in the east, in Avdiivka, in Bakhmut, and now once again they start repeated all over again, absolutely making zero changes. That is why it is no wonder, and I even can kinda understand them. Some of them started to literally give up. They just say, okay, whatever, send me whatever you want me to be, I will do whatever is required from me, but do not expect me to go above my so-called job description. I'm not gonna contribute much. I'm just gonna do whatever is needed. And this is a good thing for Ukraine, because those freshest conscripts which start to arrive in Ukraine recently and which will be coming to this country in the future, the quality of their preparation, the skills and the knowledge will only become lower and lower until that point when Russian soldiers will absolutely arrive to Ukraine having zero skills, zero knowledge, zero experience, not being able to do anything. And knowing this, I will not be surprised that the Russian soldiers will start realizing, hopefully sooner than later, that they are being sent to Ukraine for pretty much nothing, just for the purpose of being present in this country. That they will start realizing that they are being treated by their generals and the leadership as literal cannon fodder. And so yes, now as promised, let's talk about the situation in the south when the entire Ukrainian battalion crossed Dnipro river, and then we'll talk about so-called huge success by Ukrainians in Crimea. But first of all, guys, if you do not mind and if you do like this style of daily updating and if you wish to continue receiving them, can you please like this video and subscribe to my channel? This will help the development so much. Thank you so much. You can also follow me on Instagram to see how I live outside of YouTube. The link is down below. And so yes, speaking about the south, the very first stop we have to make is in Skadovsk, where the local Russian military base has been completely destroyed as a result of a Ukrainian attack. Specifically, just this military base alone. No civilian infrastructure, no residential buildings, military base of Russians. Reportedly, at the moment of recording this video, there are 5 casualties and 15 soldiers are injured. Next, to go even more to the south, to Sevastopol, and yet another extremely loud noise has been reported by the locals, and then there was this smoke coming from the Black Sea. Along the southern front lines, more specifically in Zaporozhye, Ukrainians were also reportedly able to destroy the modernized Russian air defense system S-300V4. And ultimately is yet another video of Ukrainians destroying 2 small units of Russians which used to launch drones against the position of Ukrainians. In this case, Ukrainians won. But pretty much yes, the most significant event of the last 24 hours, according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, is that Ukrainians, specifically the entire battalion at this point of more than 300 people, crossed Dnipro river, brought several armored vehicles with them, expanded the bridgehead, and are preparing for the next stage of the ultimate liberation. And the most obvious crossing points at this moment, according to both Russian and Ukrainian soldiers, are obviously next to Krinky, then in this area Poima, Pyshanivka and Pinstepny, and also even including in Oleshki, right where the next two already semi-destroyed Antonovsky Bridge, which had been destroyed, if you remember, last year. And reportedly the biggest crossing is happening as we speak next to Krinky. Russians were not able to slow down or stop the Ukrainian advancement. They also reportedly had to retreat to the second line of defense, and at this very moment, once again, all of this is not yet fully confirmed by the General Staff of Ukraine. I'm only referring to Russian and Ukrainian sources from this area and the media available in the publicly available sources. And so basically what they say right now is that Ukrainians start to bring even more armored vehicles to the north of Krinky. But wait, there is more. Because according to the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Oleksiy Danilov, Ukrainians are also having a huge success in Crimean Peninsula. And what he's basically referring to is obviously not yet the ground operation on the peninsula itself, but rather distant attacks by Ukrainians against Russian targets, such as, for example, the most notorious ones against Sevastopol, which even resulted in the destruction of the Russian Black Sea headquarters located in this port, and even made a lot of Russian Black Sea Fleet vessels, submarines, ships and so on to even leave this port and go further away on a safe distance, such as for example to Novorossiysk and Rostov-on-Don. But even in those places they are not still fully safe. Ukrainians might still potentially reach them. And also the most recent attack against not yet even fully built ship of Russians in Kerch port, Askolt, the small missile carrier. Once again, reportedly, it was the very first time in the history of war when Ukrainians were able to destroy a Russian ship, which was not even yet part of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. And ultimately, according to the representative of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, Andriy Yusov, Ukrainians now officially locked Crimean Bridge as their full target in the near future. I know it might be some bad translation, just literal translation from Russian/Ukrainian into English, but basically what it means is that Ukrainians now fully see Crimean Bridge as their official target, and no matter what the Western countries say, no matter how much Russians want to protect it, there will be more attacks against this bridge, and they will not stop most likely until either the bridge is severely damaged or fully destroyed. At this very moment, most of Ukrainian future steps are still in the planning process. Also, the winter is coming, so most likely some combat activities will slow down, but once again this will give time Ukrainians to prepare more for such distant attacks, such as for example against Crimean Bridge. We all already know how vulnerable Putin becomes whenever there are any attacks against the Crimean Peninsula. So basically destroying this legacy of Putin will most certainly inflict a huge reputational damage to the regime of Putin itself. So let's see what Ukrainians will come up with. I'm genuinely very curious. And as always, if you don't want to miss any of these crucial updates in the future, just please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes one click. Thank you so much, Patreons, for your support. Thank you guys for giving me another chance and watching this video all the way until the end, and see you tomorrow.